This is Reverend Paul Jakes, and I'd like to welcome you to Love in Action. This is a program that allows us to look at Illinois, Chicago, and what's happening in our world today. And today I'm glad to welcome Rod Joy, candidate for Lieutenant Governor for the state of Illinois. Welcome. Glad to have you with us.
Pastor Jakes, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, not only in your house of worship, but on a program called Love in Action. I think those are two very powerful concepts.
Yes.
And to be on your program and to have an opportunity to talk about love and action, I think we're going to have fun.
Well, I am really excited, and thank you so much. Years ago, my mother was really moved to actually do this, inspired by the good Lord to have a ministry that deals with love in action. To know what makes Rod Joy tick, and so please.
How much time we got?
Well, I tell you, I'm glad that we can get into some of it, and tell us a little bit about where you come from, where you were born, and what education that you have.
I'm a lifelong Illinoisan. I was born and raised in Evanston, Illinois, not too far away from here. I live now in Bronzeville on the south side at 42nd and King Drive. I'm an artist. I come from a family of artists. My father was a graphic artist. A lot of my siblings are in the arts. I played football growing up, so I was the captain of our football team at Evanston Township High School. This was before they had the concussion protocol and all of that. It was like old school. This was old school. Yes.
So you put a hurting on some of the other fellows.
That's how I played the game.
What made you decide to run for Lieutenant Governor for the state of Illinois, and if there's any fear, is there what's going on? But before we get there, I'd like to know, you have a wife, you have a family.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your family.
My wife is in India right now.
Really?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of a snowstorm.
Yeah. Yes.
We're here on Kedzie.
Yes.
We're in the middle of a campaign.
Yes.
We're just a few short weeks away from the March 20th primary. So it's nose to the grindstone.
Yes.
But my wife and our youngest son, Haile Joy, my wife's name is Kalana Joy. She's my much, much better half.
Yes.
She's brilliant.
Yes.
She's gorgeous. This has been an incredibly difficult time for our family.
Valentine's Day is coming.
Valentine's Day is coming.
That's good that you
have to edit this hard. You have to edit this hard. Just tape it some flowers.
Yeah.
But my wife just went to India to visit our middle son, Banu. And Banu has been in Bangalore completing his senior year of high school. So he's actually abroad.
Yeah.
And Kalana took our youngest son, Haile. So they're on a 12-day adventure in India right now.
Yes.
And so we're going to use this short window of time to get back on the campaign trail and travel all over Illinois. You know, I've been on the ticket with Chris Kennedy since about mid-September. And since that time, Chris and I have literally crisscrossed the state. But we're going to use this window the next several days to hit it hard and to also travel downstate, because I think people fail to remember how big Illinois is. And sometimes when we talk about kind of the dynamics right now in the state, people focus on race, people focus on religion, but one of the more sensitive issues is geography and pushing back against the state of Chicago syndrome, or this idea that life ends at I-80. You asked about my wife.
Yes. And you've got two sons?
Well, we had 3 boys.
Yeah,
you know, we lost our oldest son to gun violence this summer.
His name was?
Xavier Joy.
Xavier Joy.
Yes.
I know it's a very sensitive issue, so, but you have somehow turned your pain into power. How have you been able to do that?
Yeah, I don't know that I would, I'm attempting to do that. But ever since that horrific day, our focus has been how to prevent other families from enduring the anguish and sorrow that touched our lives. Everywhere we go, unfortunately, and that's a pain that my running mate, Chris Kennedy, and the Kennedy family are familiar with. But everywhere we go, we meet other individuals who have experienced a sort of horrific loss. And it's not just the issue here in Chicago, it's the issue in communities all across the state.
Absolutely. I know that Mr. Kennedy has an 8-point plan dealing with gun violence. I've got to get him to maybe do a press conference here or something and talk about that, because we want to see something done about this violence, and that's something that I've been dealing with for a long time. I think that it's important with reentry programs. I think that there needs to be something done. We need to have more businesses that come in town to create jobs for so many young people. I'm wondering, you've got plans to help bring more businesses to Illinois?
Sure. Yes. I think first of all, to go back a step or two, when our son was taken from us, we reached out to a lot of people who had experienced sudden and traumatic loss of a loved one to gun violence. And Chris was on that list. Even before I joined the ticket, he had rolled out a comprehensive strategy for addressing the issue of gun violence. And rightly so, the very first recommendation of our plan is all about jobs and economic opportunity. I think Chris's line is opportunity, one on issues. We're running on values, and the enduring values of freedom and fairness and opportunity and equal justice. We're really running to right some of these enduring wrongs. We're running because we have systems that continue to oppress and marginalize people. And I'm sure we'll have time to talk about some of those systems.
Well, I mean, no, you actually hit it right square, because over 250,000 last year have actually left the Chicagoland area. We're talking about majority African Americans. We're looking at a serious problem where businesses are fleeing hand over foot because of taxation, the lack of support, and the obvious lack of funding. Our population in the state continues to decline, which is in turn a decrease in revenue and increases in taxation, thereby placing an undue burden on the rest of the citizens. So we are in need of you. I'm glad you're running. And I know that in running, you run to win. And Lord knows, I ran all over the city of Chicago years ago, back in 2003. I ran against Mayor Daley, and it was quite a run. But one thing I learned as a big man
Yeah.
You got to have good shoes.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yes, indeed, man, because you run a hole in.
You know, when I talked to you after joining the ticket, you told me to get some good shoes.
Absolutely.
And I actually walked a hole in my shoes. But hopefully we can talk some about your run for mayor and why you threw your hat in the ring.
Oh,
and we talked about fear. We
Yeah.
talked about love.
Yeah.
We talked about action. We
Yeah.
talked about fear. I'd
Yeah.
love to talk about what was happening then versus what's happening now.
Yeah.
But before we do, since you talked about people leaving, you know, my running mate often talks about the fact that people are leaving the state.
Yes.
And we used to be the 5th most populous state in the nation. Now we've dropped down. Pennsylvania's leapfrogged us because so many people are leaving the state in record numbers. And Chris often says the state of Illinois is getting smaller, and as it gets smaller, it's getting wealthier because the poor are being pushed out of the state by Governor Ronner, who's been a complete disaster for our state. He's dragged Illinois to new record lows. You know, he had a 736-day budget impasse that caused a lot of pain and suffering for people all across the state.
You think y'all can beat him?
You kidding me? I can't wait. Now we have to get past the semifinals before we can go to the finals.
Yes.
But you know, Bruce Ronner has been, you know, he really has taken Illinois and dragged it to a state of constant crisis. And he came into office and he waged war on labor unions. He's waged war on institutions of higher learning. He's waged war on working families. But yet, his battle cry is, I'm not in charge. But you have Bruce Ronner at the state level, and instead of waging a war on poverty, he's waging a war on poor people. And then here in Chicago, if Chris Kennedy were here, he would say that Chicago's getting smaller, and as it's getting smaller, it's getting whiter, because people of color are leaving Chicago in record numbers, and especially African American folks. And while people leave for different reasons, you know, the person who leaves from Central Illinois or Southern Illinois might have a different motivation than people here in Chicago or in our neighborhoods who might have different concerns. The common denominator, what unites everyone who's leaving, is the disruption and corruption that exists in state government. Because instead of a state government that serves all people, we have a system where a really small handful of political insiders, and you know who they are, they wield disproportionate power. And this broken system, this top-down, Game of Thrones, winner-take-all approach to governing, that's why people are leaving Chicago. That's why people are leaving Illinois. We're running to provide an alternative.
Well, then I have to ask you, since you're a former advisor, senior advisor to Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, how does all of that help you in now running for lieutenant governor, and certainly being one who is able to voice some heavy concerns on the issues of the day?
Well, I'd love to share a little bit about how I came to Congresswoman Schakowsky's office, but it was a joy to work with her. I had an opportunity to focus on earmarks and appropriations before they became a dirty word. So part of my focus was taking resources from the federal level and bringing them home to the 9th Congressional District. I love working for Jan, Congresswoman Schakowsky. But working for a member of Congress, the challenge was you kind of had to be 3 miles wide and 1 inch deep. Like you had to know a little bit about so many issues, because you would deal with issues that you didn't even know were issues. And there's some challenge to that, but I really wanted to go deep on an issue that I cared about. And so when I left Congresswoman Schakowsky's office, I went on to lead a statewide advocacy and public policy group called Change Illinois. And it's kind of like a chamber of commerce for the cultural life in the state. It's kind of like an advocacy arm for artists and theaters, museums, dance companies, symphonies. Our goal at the Arts Alliance was really to elevate culture and creative expression and really position the arts as a policy asset and prosperity generator for the state.
So that led you into this automatic voting victory that you
kind of.
I mean,
so I was at the arts. That was such a fun job, like I believe in activism and organizing and civic engagement.
Man, you know I like that.
So we got the love,
I like
the
that.
action. I believe in the action.
Absolutely.
I believe in the action. And
Absolutely.
so we were advocating on behalf of the cultural life of our state.
Sure.
And that was really fun. It was work, but it was fun to collaborate with creatives. The challenge is, again, everything we care about in this state. Absolutely everything we care about, whether it's arts and culture, education, economic development, the environment, transportation, everything's being held up by the corruption and dysfunction. So I left the Arts Alliance and I went on to lead an organization called Change Illinois. And CHANGE is an acronym for the Coalition for Honest and New Government Ethics. And so the focus at CHANGE is how to improve our core systems of government and politics to make them more fair, functional, and inclusive. So how do you change the rules so more people, ordinary people, have power? Right? And so we worked on at CHANGE a number of democracy reform issues, voting rights.
Sure.
We worked on redistricting reform and tried to
save some congressional districts.
Yes, and legislative districts, and then campaign finance reform, which is a huge issue, particularly in this election. But we worked on, you mentioned automatic voter registration. Our coalition helped bring automatic voter registration to Illinois, which builds on a series of voting rights reforms over the last several years.
Absolutely.
We have online registration, we have same-day registration, now we have automatic voter registration, which is a fundamental shift in how voter registration works in this state. So the old system is you had to opt in. You went to go to the DMV to get your license or your state ID. You have to make a decision to register to vote. Now, that's going to happen automatically when people interact with state government, and they now have to opt out. And that shift, in addition to some other reforms, we believe if fully funded and fully implemented, could add 1 million new voters to the voting roll. But the big thing is, it's a reform that gives more power to voters. It gives more power to ordinary people.
Sure.
And in many ways, that's kind of the focus of this campaign.
Absolutely. You know, I was just thinking about all this, about automatic and how all these things can help. And, you know, years ago when Roland Burris was in office, he set up a program that families of victims of homicides, that they could get up to $27,000 to help them with funerals, help them with hospital, and so many other things. But if there's not a social worker or someone in the church that can help them to write the letter to the judge, they don't know how to get these type of things in order to help them, in order for them to succeed. And many times they're frustrated and all. So I'm thinking that once you're in office, that you could help collaborate with the Attorney General, and we could figure out ways to help more families that are victims, and not only with homicides but other things as well. I like the way that you think. I like the way that you're working. But I've got a question I got to ask you, just kind of transitioning a little bit. In Inglewood, there's a big issue. There's been a lot of hoopla about Mayor Rahm Emanuel wanting to close 3 high schools, now 4 high schools, okay, and then build 1 big one. Now, tell me what you think about that, and I want you to listen to this on Love and Action, because this is interesting. So
we started talking about what's happening at the state and people leaving the state, and essentially how Bruce Rauner has waged war on the poor.
Right.
Now, my running mate made some headlines beginning of this calendar year in January last month, because he talked about some obvious but inconvenient truths about public policy and the impact that public policy is having in Chicago on people of color.
Okay.
The fact that so many black families are leaving Chicago and they're being pushed out of the city. And if you look at what's happened for decades and what's continuing to happen right now is, again, you have these systems that oppress and marginalize people. You mentioned the schools. So we'll dig down a little in terms of what's on the table today, but let's back up a step. In 2013, we had the single largest school closing in U.S. history here in Chicago. Some 50 schools were shuttered by Mayor Rahm Emanuel and his hand-picked Chicago Public School Board.
So you're saying he closed 50 schools?
At once. And there was massive teacher layoffs, massive budget cuts, and these massive school closings. And in the neighborhood I live in Bronzeville, over the last 17 years, there have been 18 school closings in Bronzeville alone. And when you close a neighborhood school, you tear the heart out of a community. And we're going to come back because this mayor is proposing more school closures, and not just in Inglewood, but at the National Teachers Academy in the South Loop. But look across the board. I'm of the mind that structural racism plays out in every aspect of daily life in Chicago. It influences jobs, it influences justice,
Absolutely.
It influences housing, it influences the air we breathe, the water we drink, and quite frankly, it determines who gets to live and who gets to die. But we have these massive school closings. Rahm Emanuel came to office. He closed half of the mental health facilities in Chicago. And we know that hurt people.
Yes.
He allowed,
especially mental health. Yeah, right.
He allowed the CHA to accumulate hundreds of millions of dollars that was earmarked for affordable housing. We have the police department as an institution.
What are they going to do with all that money? Are they waiting until they move all the black folks out?
Yeah.
Then they're going to use it?
You can't argue with the facts. If people are leaving, you can't argue with these deep cuts. So essentially across the board, and we'll talk about the school closings, but Rahm Emanuel has perfected the art of disinvestment, displacement, and disruption. And on the disruption front, he closed these schools in 2013, and now he's proposed to close the 4 public high schools in Inglewood and not offer those high school age students another public high school alternative for at least a year while they build a new school. At the same time, there's a school called the National Teachers Academy, which is a level 1+ outstanding school in the South Loop. It's a predominantly African American school, and the mayor has made, and his cherry-picked school board, hand-picked school board, has delivered a recommendation to convert, close essentially NTA and make it a high school for the incoming population in the South Loop. We believe that's wrong. When you close a school, you close the doors of opportunity. When you close a neighborhood school, you're causing disruption and displacement. Just look at what's happened in CPS these last several years, where we've had scandal after scandal. We've had Forrest Claypool resign in shame recently.
He's out of there.
And Barbara Byrd Bennett convicted of corruption. We need to stop with the disinvestment, and we need an equity agenda where we're putting resources where they're needed most.
Absolutely.
So we want to make sure that there's real engagement, there's real community engagement, and we press pause on some of these destructive policies, and then we engage the community and we treat community members as co-equal partners.
I know that we're getting close to the end of our interview, but I would not want you to leave this show without talking about I know you guys didn't sponsor this commercial, but there's a commercial that is on television, and it's constantly being ran. I think it's from the governor's campaign, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're saying that there's been a conversation that was going on with former governor, and they're say Blagojevich, and also with J.B. Pritzker. I think we need to run that tape right now and let people hear that, for we can be able to check that out, and then you can comment on it.
Well, you talked about the possibility of appointing Lisa to the Senate seat, but I don't know whether you were just speculating. I got a great idea for you, though. Okay. I'm sure you thought of this one, but Jesse White. Even though I know you guys aren't like bosom buddies or anything, it covers you on the African American thing.
Correct.
He's totally he's Senate material in a way that Emil Jones isn't, if I may say.
Okay.
I mean, he's just, I don't know how to say it exactly, but Emil's a little more crass.
Right.
And it opens up the Secretary of State spot, which is the key spot.
Right.
Controls jobs, etc. And it'd be a lot less pressure on you. You don't have to put an African American in that spot.
Correct.
And so you can pick an ally, or you can pick, I don't know, Jay Hoffman, or I don't know, whoever you might want to pick that that would be helpful to you if you were running for re-election in 2010. And so that seems like, I know the Jesse White thing is like, it's not a perfect thing because he's not like your best friend, but it does cover you, and it doesn't get you Jesse Jackson Jr., which, oh God, please. I mean,
listen to me.
I mean, it would be a nightmare. I hope you don't do that. But
man,
Valerie Jarrett, I guess, I don't know if she's really out of the running, but that I guess gets you, I don't know what with Obama, but I'm not sure what you get. Maybe I'm missing something. But if you're forced to put an African American in the spot, which my guess is, forced to do anything, but my guess is a lot of pressure to do it. Of all the African Americans I can think that are sort of like qualified and people vetted, and people will say, "Oh, that's a pretty good pick." The one that is least offensive and maybe gets you the most because it gets you that Secretary of State appointment is Jesse White.
You can argue he's got a lot in common with Obama. He's black and white. How stupid is that? Hey, no, he's a good. He'd be a legitimate pick.
I'm not pushing anybody.
No, I understand. What you're saying there makes perfect sense. Now, he has said he doesn't want it.
Yeah.
But not privately to me. I haven't talked to him about it, but he has said it publicly.
Uh-huh.
That's one thing. If it's actually offered to you, what do you do?
Well, and he would win re-election if he wanted to hold it. I mean, just because he's kind of a popular figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right. Look, it's a good sentiment. You don't want to be Secretary of State, do you, JB?
Oh, I wasn't pushing for me for Secretary of State. I mean, I think I could probably do that job, but that's not. But that's how.
Well, now that we've seen this particular tape, and you've heard the comments that has been said, and in that he also talked about Jesse White, he talked about Jeremiah Wright, he talked about Jesse Jr., he talked about Obama, he talked about just about everybody.
Yes.
I wouldn't vote for anyone like that. I wouldn't cast my vote. What's your comment? What's your thoughts?
I think to hear those sickening words is highly disrespectful. It's hurtful. I think it's offensive to refer to black men in America, black elected officials from Illinois, as least offensive. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to imagine a circumstance where that term is appropriate, least offensive.
Yes.
To refer to a champion, a legislative champion like Senate President Emil Jones as crass, or that he's not Senate material. Yes. That's a slap in the face of all black elected officials.
Absolutely.
I think also what's disheartening is, we had an opportunity to listen to someone over his words. But this is the same gentleman, J.B. Pritzker, who went on national TV. He went on CNBC, and when he was asked when President Obama was running for re-election, would he be voting for President Obama on national TV, he said he didn't know. He needed to see who the Republican nominee would be. If I'm not mistaken, at that time, I think the Republican nominees were like Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich, folks who are just a different sort of elected politician than President Obama from Illinois, our own President Obama. So to me, I didn't know about someone who said they weren't sure if they were going to vote for President Obama, and they had to see who the Republican nominee would be, and then referred to, this is national TV again, it's not a tape recorder FBI conversation, it's national TV, referred to President Obama as a mediocre candidate. So I think taken as a whole, it's profoundly disheartening. You know, the great American poet, Maya Angelou, she has a line where she says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time.
Absolutely.
Believe them the first time. And I think just in general, you know, this March 20th election, and early voting, by the time you see this, you can go cast a ballot because early voting will be underway. This is an opportunity to decide what kind of party we want to represent. This is a battle for the soul of the Democratic Party. And we can have a Democratic Party that you hear on those tapes, where it's a pay-to-play culture, where it's backroom wheeling and dealing, where we refer to African Americans in a way that's akin to pawns on a chessboard, where they're just moved around.
Yes.
Or we can move in a different direction, where we have true bottom-up civic engagement, bottom-up democracy, where government works for us and with us and not against us.
Yes.
But we have to change our party. And we have to decide what kind of party we're going to be.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because someone asked me the question, why have a Democratic primary? Why can't you and JB and Kennedy and his other running mate just get into a back room and then y'all just make a decision on who would be the candidate? But hearing what you're saying, we need to discuss the issues. We need to flush them out, and we become a stronger Democrat or even country as we discuss these issues. And so I'm glad to have you. Please give us, one last comment and word of wisdom to our audience. Feel free to look right in that camera and tell them what you would like them to know on Love in Action.
How about this? First of all, thanks for tuning in to Love in Action. To be on a program that talks about such powerful concepts, it's great to be here, and I can't wait to come back. But I think anybody watching this who lives in the state of Illinois, they know that Illinois must change. That we need a newer, better Illinois. We need an Illinois where equity is paramount, where public officials serve the public good, where black lives truly matter, where ordinary people have strong political voice, and where all children in our state, regardless of their race, their religion, their zip code, where all of our children have the opportunity to grow and achieve their full God-given potential. And that's why Chris Kennedy and I are running for office. We know that Illinois must change, and we have an agenda to make change happen. We want to change the way we tax our citizens, move away from this broken local property tax system that's punishing property owners of color. We want to move to a graduated progressive income tax. We want to change the way we tax our citizens. We want to change the way we invest in education. We want to fully fund education so every child in this state has access to a high quality education. Chris wants to be America's great education governor. And we want to change the way we elect and hold elected officials accountable. You know, the will of the people should drive the direction of the state, not the dollars of its wealthiest citizens. So if you, like me, are sick and tired of politics as usual in Illinois, we invite you to join our campaign. We need your activism, we need your engagement, and most of all, we need your vote. So get out there, vote Kennedy Joy for Illinois, and thanks for tuning in to Love and Action.
Well, I tell you, with a picture like that, I would have to vote early, and in Chicago, they would say often.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Again, this is Reverend Paul Jakes and Love in Action with our special guest, Ra Joy. Let's do it.